Well, hi, Frankie and Ding Dong fans. I'm King Ding Dong, and we are here live in Portland, Maine at Bayside Bowl. And I'm here with some very, very special guests to Bayside Bowl. We're going to introduce them to you. These guys are going to make our center even more amazing than it already is. You guys out there in Frankie and Ding Dong land, we know you love Bayside Bowl. And these guys, man, these guys are wizards with lanes, anything from the lane beds to the lane machines. These guys are it. Let's go ahead and meet them right now. Go ahead and tell them who you are and a little bit about your business.
I'm Silas. This is Brad, and our company's Bowling Voodoo.
Bowling Voodoo, yes.
We've been doing this for about 10 years, 5 years working with another company called Maine.
Yeah.
And then we kind of branched off on our own whenever he retired. So we've got about 5 years doing this on our own. And we're probably 250, 300 centers in.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say 250 to 300 centers in, what they're talking about, folks, is leveling these folks' lanes to get them to play as best they can and going in, offering suggestions on lane play for your Kegel machines especially, but they will work with the Brunswick machines as well, and these guys will get those lanes to play better than USBC specs, I guarantee it.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for us is, USBC has their plus or minus 40,000s.
Yeah.
With crowns, suppressions, tilts, everything like that. With us, we try to keep it within a 10,000s range.
So 1/10,000th range, guys. I'll tell you right there, those of you that own centers that are maybe having a hard time with your house shot and a lot of variances from lane to lane, these guys, Bowling Voodoo, they're the ones to help you out. Lots of experience, and as far as I know, you guys are the only ones in the business going out and doing this, correct?
As far as we know, yeah, as well. And if anybody is, we have proprietary stuff that we do on our, that nobody can match how our consistency is. The lanes maintain consistency across the house. We have certain things we do that we know, even if somebody says they're leveling the lanes, they're not doing it like we do.
Right. Well, experience is key, and you guys know that. Even you bowlers out there know that. We talked about it before. Practice, it never makes perfect, but it definitely gets you better. And if you're always striving to get better, then you're going to get better results, and that's what Bowling Voodoo does. They're always learning, just like the regular bowling nerds out there that, like you and I, that love bowling. These guys are out there. They're doing it. They've done hundreds of centers now. And I got to tell you, they offer it at a very, very fair price for what you get out of the long run and the longevity that you're going to get out of your lanes. Now, specifically synthetic lanes, you guys work on wood lanes at all?
Typically, no. Whenever it comes to wood lanes, trying to level a wood lane with the sanding equipment and whatnot, they stay within 5,000ths of an inch.
Really?
They are very, very flat for the most part. So we don't ever have to go into a wood house unless we're doing something like, fixing tilts or something of that nature.
We've done small lane or small center installations of synthetic.
Yeah. So the other thing that you guys do though is flat gutters, things like that, right?
Yep.
Yes.
So centers, even like a wood center, could benefit from you guys coming in and doing those type of upgrades to them as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
As well as working with that house shot. You guys are looking out there. Now, PBA going on right now, that Roth-Holman doubles. I don't know if you guys have caught any of it. Really, really exciting action. Every once in a while, it's nice to see these guys strike. I like to see them on bowl on hard stuff. Frankie and Ding Dong, we love our hard stuff. But every once in a while, it's nice to see them strike. And a lot of proprietors like to see their bowlers strike because it brings them back. Now, if you're having a hard time getting your bowlers to strike on the house shot, Bowling Voodoo, they're the ones that you want to call to get help with that as well, right?
Yeah, to a point, yeah. Well, strikes kind of come with the territory. We can't guarantee higher scores or anything like that, but what we can promise is that we'll give you the best optimal environment for scoring.
best optimal environment and most
And,
consistency from
absolutely.
lane to
Right.
lane, correct?
So, because what our goal is to create that consistency and the fair play for all styles of bowlers. So whether you bowl down the track, whether you're a tweener, whether you're a stroker, whether you're a cranker, any of that all lines play equally and have a fair amount of chance to score as well as they possibly can.
Yeah, and that's interesting. We had an interesting conversation, not to go too deep into it, but these guys know their stuff. And we were talking about a house pattern and how it holds up throughout the night. And a good way to get it to hold up is to spread out your players. You know what I mean? You got your bowlers playing up the outside. You got your tweeners playing, maybe just inside the track. And you got your crankers playing in. It makes the longevity of the pattern hold up way better that way, and everyone's getting to the pocket, everyone's having a good time, and that's what we like to do here at Bayside, but we like to do it on tough stuff, so that's
Right.
a little bit different here.
Absolutely.
And as you guys were saying, we talked a little bit, this week as you guys have been doing your work here, it's going to show even a little bit more for us where we don't have that huge mission room like the house shot, we're bowling on sports stuff all the time, that consistency from lane to lane is going to even show up more probably in this center where we only bowl on sport shots than it would on a center that's only bowling on house shots. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
absolutely 100% true. The more volume of oil you have out there, topography kind of makes it more evident that you've got issues out there on the lanes, rather than somebody with a house shot where you've got a lot of room to miss. You don't have such a high volume of oil on the outside, things of that nature. Revs and speed obviously nowadays kind of trump a lot of those issues.
Yeah.
But for your normal players that are playing down the boards, not have so much hand, they'll struggle a lot more than you'll see with the higher speed, higher rev players.
Yeah, and I've said this before, time and time again. Hook equals miss room. I truly believe that.
Absolutely.
In leveling the lane, making it more consistent from lane to lane on some of those really tough shots that we always bowl on here, it's going to make it more fair all the way across the board for more players, and make it a chance for any of our bowlers to compete. And that's the thing, we make the lanes tough so that way the lower bowler has just as much of a chance as maybe the high bowler, because we're kind of bringing the field together and making the lanes tough.
And that's our end all goal, is that fairness for all bowlers. So,
Yeah.
for instance, we had somebody want us to just come in and fix just the spots that USBC said it was illegal.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could charge them time to go out there and do that and get paid for it, but for me and us, we had to tell them that either we do all your lanes or we do nothing, because that's the integrity that we want to maintain. Is we want that fair play and consistency across the house for all bowlers. And
for lack of better terms, not do a half-ass job.
Absolutely.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So,
I mean,
so-
we've turned down quite a few, a handful of centers that are just wanting like spot stuff done.
Yeah.
We won't do that. And we tell them, we try to explain to it like USBC's inspection process, if you don't even count tilts, is essentially 25 spots they read per lane. You have over 1,000 spots on that in that area that we read, because we do that entire area
Front
all the way.
to back, all the way.
Right.
All the way.
Yeah.
And so we got over 1,000 spots we check, compared to USBC inspection checking 25.
Yeah.
So to even get close to knowing an idea of what your lane is with the new inspection process, it's going to take you an inspection every 3 years. They check one spot on each of the 5 panels, and so it's going to take 15 years before you even have an idea of what your lanes truly look like.
Right, and you guys can make that map and actually make each lane more consistent from lane to lane across your center. And you guys work on any synthetic panel, is that correct?
Any synthetic
yeah.
panel.
Yeah, okay, awesome. So let's go into some other things, like why you guys would be calling into a house. What creates some of these topographical issues in these lanes?
Depending on the age of the building.
Yeah.
You have settling over years and whatnot.
Yep.
But as time goes on, the foundations are made out of wood.
Yep.
They're not going to last last forever. You have installs here or there in between, you know, putting new synthetic panels in, you know, every 20 years or so.
Yep.
Between the installers, between people trying to do their modifications based on USPC inspections, you know, there's going to be a variance that goes on throughout the time.
Yep.
I mean, really no fault to anybody. It's just one of those things that when Brunswick and AMF came out with these panels, they labeled them maintenance free.
Right.
And the problem with it is people are finding out 20 years later they're not so maintenance free.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
people are looking to get new lane panels, and I mean, multiple centers we've saved a huge amount of cash just by bringing their lanes back to life, or bringing their 20-year-old panels back to what they want. And just like Brad said, they change.
So would like an impact zone of a lofting area, or in our instance, like putting like the bleachers for the PBA out there, or us standing on the lane beds, would that have any effect, do you think, on topography?
So typically standing on it doesn't.
Okay.
I mean, like having the bleachers on the lanes, I mean, it really depends on how the foundation's built. So like you have your foundations for each of your lanes, but then you also have a foundation for, let's say, your walkway. So those are all going to be separated. In this case here, like, yes, lane 1 will be a little bit different because you do have a lot more weight on it. But with how new this build is, it really hasn't showed it.
Yeah. Okay.
But the biggest thing is typically, you know, you're starting to get wood coming off the concrete, you know, the nails that they used to shoot in.
Yep.
They'll come off, you'll get some weird tilts. But it's one of those things like, if you try to keep ahead of it, normally you can firefight it pretty easily.
Right.
So like, you know, every 5 or 6 years, you know, trying to just keep evaluating it, trying to just keeping an eye, making sure that there's no major issues. Because a lot of centers that we go into, you know, USBC's been in there saying that these are good or whatnot, and then we come in and we got to be the bearers of bad news when we're going in with a fine-tooth comb,
Right.
rather than, you know, like your old inspection was 3 spots on the lane.
Yeah.
So we go in, you know, you've got your front ends where your ball impact area is, and they just take a beating.
Yeah.
And it's even worse with, like, depending on what your underlayment is. Like here at Bayside, you have LSL. It doesn't take the beating like the old wood lanes did.
Right.
So if you have
No,
wood
it's
lanes,
thick, right?
right? But the thing is, like, they have specific things that you have to do to make that wood lane stay the way it is. So like you have bracers underneath the lane, and throughout impact, if they're not being tightened every year like they used to be, whenever they come in and get it resurfaced, they'll start falling off, or your toe screws that hold it to the underlayment will start coming out, and that causes massive depressions in your heads.
Yep. Yeah. So now, do you find that oil seeping maybe between the panels and or cleaner? Does that affect at all, or is that a thing?
That's not a thing.
That's
Not a
not,
thing.
that,
No, okay.
I mean,
There-
there is minimal seepage. I mean, you're talking like maybe over through these lane plugs or where the screws are or whatever, and the seams are sealed well, but usually it's like the laminate plugs, lane plugs covering the screws. If you
Yep.
pull up a panel, you'll only see like a wet section, maybe this big.
So it's-
And you're talking across 20 years, or not 20 years,
Yeah.
but you're talking across 10 years on that.
Yep.
And I mean, it's very minimal, and it's,
But what you guys do will help the longevity of the center's lane panels anyway.
Absolutely.
yes.
There's ways, like, especially if you have, you know, 15 or 20 year panels, especially if you have really high lineage, the lanes actually start getting tracked out. So the friction difference from parts of the lane to the other lane, or to the other side of the lane, may change. And that'll cause a lot of issues with pattern building, with consistency.
Yep.
So what we go and do is we actually go in and resurface the synthetic lane.
Resurface the lane.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, how many times can a synthetic lane be resurfaced?
Depending on what panel it is, if it's a solid phenolic like the SPLs here, or any of the anvils, 10, 15 times.
Really?
Before you ever make it to the actual
Before you take
print.
the printing off, yeah.
Yeah.
The HPLs are thinner, so I mean, I'd probably say like 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
But regardless, I mean, you're talking an extra 10, maybe 15 years out of life out of those compared to buying new ones.
So, and you say they get marked up. Now, would you think that like a poor cleaning regimen, like more dust on the lane, would add more scratches in the lane just because friction, the ball between the lanes?
That's kind of a loaded question now. Like you have like the longer the oil sets, the conditioner sets, it's going to collect more dust that's floating around the air and everything.
Right.
So, I mean, if that can help speed up the abrasions on the lane, but I mean, realistically, compared to how aggressive some of the bowling balls are nowadays, I mean, it's not really.
It's very minimal.
particles and
Yeah.
balls,
Right.
I think the bowling balls do, and so it's really crucial to make sure that the lanes are being conditioned like daily, which they do here.
Yep.
And it just helps minimize that. And there's some guys I know because of money and they don't have a huge amount of bowling, especially in the summer. I know there's guys there that maybe oil every other day, or I mean, we've come across guys that were only
Twice a week.
twice
they're
a week.
going twice a week.
And the synthetics, that's probably the biggest downfall, is that synthetic lanes people still think of and treat a lot of times like they're wood, and they're not wood lanes, and so they definitely have different characteristics from wood lanes.
Now, how close will the center play from we're here on the west side of Bayside Bowl now to the east side of Bayside Bowl, which is the older room over there? Is it still going to be a little bit of difference because you have the lower ceilings, different HVAC, airflow, that type of thing?
So the biggest difference between over here and over there is actually these are SPL panels,
Okay.
and over there is HPL.
Okay.
Typically, if they were both the same age, they play pretty similar. But because of that side being probably 15 years older, you know, you're looking at it having less friction. So you're always going to see that this side's going to have more hook to it rather than that side.
But we're not talking like a massive amount.
I'm talking maybe a board in it.
Like your standard league bowler, which there's no standard league bowlers at Bayside, but your average of standard league bowlers would never notice that 1 to 2 boards difference. It never would dawn on them that they are different.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the different lane panels, it's impossible to expect you guys to make this side play like that side unless we were to rip up all the lane panels, replace them all with the same age lane panels in both sides of the
But they can be close.
We can definitely make them close.
Yeah, with this resurfacing process that you guys have, I'm sure will help as well. Yeah, that's awesome. How about what's the most challenging part of you guys' job? So you come into a center, you know, now is it actually disclosing to the owner, man, your lanes are kind of fucked up, you know? I hate to say it, but
I'd have to say that probably is the worst part. We try to be fair. We try to give appropriate bidding. Try not to go over that whenever possible. You know, and a lot of times we try to stay under it, but that's not possible sometimes. But that's probably the worst part because that's all done from, you know, we're from St. Louis. We can't just drive up here and do a free estimate and analyze the place.
Yeah.
So we had to do it over the phone. And so a lot of places, so sight unseen, we can only guess and talk and get as much input as possible.
So it is an estimate at that
Right.
point.
And I talked to a gentleman today for another job we'll be doing to get a little bit more information than he gave us on his email because he had some stuff that sounded concerning to us, so we wanted to cover the ground and just give him a heads up. So that's probably the worst part, is sitting there giving one estimate, but then being like, well,
this is what we found.
yeah, we found this, and this is kind of
because like the biggest problem for us before prior to the USBC actually coming in and doing them themselves is when they had the area, like your associations doing them, and the problem was the numbers weren't reliable.
Right.
So like we would have somebody send us a copy of their inspection sheet. I would try to do a bid based off of their inspection sheet, and it would just be night and day difference when we walked in.
Yeah, because you got the variances from association to association,
Well,
processes were different, that type
Right.
of thing.
You
right.
know.
The processes are not just that, but I mean, we've come across guys that said they hadn't seen their association guys in years. They just send the paper in or whatever. I mean,
Right.
no. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that it happens everywhere. I'm not saying it happens everywhere, but it's fairly common enough that it was disturbing enough for USBC to make the decision that they did make. You know,
and I mean, like, we've had 4 or 5 calls, you know, about us coming in after the USBC's done their inspection. And the one thing that has really helped us with the whole USBC thing is that now that these centers are actually getting fairly accurate reporting on what their center looks like.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for a lot of people, it's real bad. But
yeah, we had
fortunately
one
for a
center
lot-
that was only 67% compliant.
Oh wow.
But then you're talking, you know, you're looking at thousands of dollars only when you're looking at that bad.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in the 90% range, that's about average. I mean, we've seen a couple 98s, but that's like on a brand new install. So even like a brand new install is not 100% compliant. But I mean, anywhere between like that 85 to 95% range is about typical. If you're worse than that, you're probably looking at a lot of neglect over time.
Yeah.
And you're probably looking at to be footing a pretty decent sized bill to get it fixed right.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to figure if you're not putting up that maintenance year after year, you're saving that money anyway. So
Right.
eventually, you're going to have to spend that money. The other centers that might be putting up the maintenance over the years, maybe it's a little bit less, but either way, you guys can make that center play better when you
Absolutely.
guys come in. I know I've seen you guys talk with our head mechanics, mad scientist Greg, and you know, you guys are really excellent with him, giving him some tips, helping him with the machine, helping him understand exactly what's going on here. And Greg, as you guys, I'm sure, found out, super intelligent.
Oh, yeah.
Great head mechanic. We're really lucky to have him.
He doesn't really wear the shoes of a mechanic, though.
He's super intelligent. He's a great dude. He really is.
No, and that's another thing that gives. I mean, we've been bowlers our whole lives. I worked for Brunswick for 10 years.
Yeah.
I worked in the bowling centers. I was a mechanic, so I've worked all aspects in a bowling center, actually, all aspects, and even pro shop.
Yeah.
So over my course of my years.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to, whether I'm talking to the manager or whether I'm talking to the mechanic, I'm able to speak their language, so
Yeah.
to speak.
You
So
definitely-
we make it so it's not as overwhelming once you start talking about stuff. It's trying to keep it more in layman terms and not making sure they understand that this is like all beneficial for the reason of the bowlers, happier bowlers. Hopefully happier bowlers spend more money in your center.
Absolutely. So proprietors out there, take note of what he just said. Now, these guys aren't just some flooring people out there. These guys are bowling background, bowling nerds. They want to make your center a better place to bowl in. And as he said, the more fun your bowlers will have, the more money they'll spend in the bar, in the kitchen, in the bowling itself. They will enjoy themselves more, and you will enjoy the profits more. So, Bowling Voodoo, check these guys out. Now, if you guys can disclose, maybe not the name of the center, but like, what is the absolute just worst? Like, can you just like, if you can't disclose
Yeah,
the center, it's fine.
I absolutely.
I just like a horror story of you guys.
We can talk a horror story on
300
like
centers. You guys
Yeah.
must have seen a horror story.
Thousands.
I want to hear it.
So back before we became Bowling Voodoo, when we were working at Lane Analytics, the boss had sent me down to do a mapping of a bowling center in San Antonio. And I go in there and I'm doing all the mapping, and I send him a file, and he's like, "You did this wrong." He's like, "You fucked up." And then I do it again, and he's like, "I guess you're right." So we go in. The entire lane mapping is black. So for the last 6 of the 24 lanes, they were tilted a quarter of an inch.
Wow.
6 times worse than USBC regulations.
So you guys have seen those lane topography maps. Normally you see them in blue, reds, yellows, even.
greens, yeah.
This was black, folks.
Yeah.
That didn't even.
It doesn't even show in our ledger.
Yeah, meaning that the ball was like heavily influenced to the 10-pin side.
When we say it's not making the hill, we weren't just kidding at that
kidding.
point. It's not just the course shift.
All joking aside, we actually were in there and I saw like an older lady, probably in her 70s. She was bowling. You saw her ball rotating, trying to head to the pocket, but it's rotating towards the pocket, but it went to the gutter because her ball, she threw so slow and everything. Her ball had zero chance of overcoming that.
So their house shot had 0 from 20 to the gutter on the right, and then like a bunch of oil from 20 to the gutter on the left.
But no, like I actually had to go underneath the building and check out the foundation. Come to find out the foundation was actually just cinder blocks on dirt.
Oh, yeah. So some rain,
Erosion over time, just eventually just made that building settle out a 1/4 inch. So we had to go underneath all the lanes.
Jack up the building itself.
Well, not the building, but the
jack up
lanes.
jack up the
So
lane.
you can do that separate from.
So you actually separate it from the actual foundation.
Ooh.
And you go in
if you can
under.
get it separated, at least we could. I mean, every job like that's a little different, though. You have to attack in different ways, but it can add up.
It's really not.
It's not
comparable for what we're actually doing.
Ripping the whole building apart.
Absolutely.
And rebuilding the building.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. So speaking of worse lanes, now those of us that bowl at Bayside, we all think that lane 1 is more different than any lane in this building. What did you guys find out?
So, lane 1 does have tilt issue.
Okay.
But other than that, the pounds and depressions aren't too terribly bad. I mean, it does have some depressions in the heads. I mean, it's gonna make carry definitely more difficult.
We find it to hook.
Right. So when you're more depressed, because you do have the grandstands on that one side, you are shifted this way.
Okay.
So you're shifted to where the right-handers are going to have free hook.
Okay.
I'm not talking a ton, but when we talk about numbers, we don't talk about like plus or minus or anything like that. We're talking about slope per board. So slope per board is how the ball's influenced due to gravity. And so let's say, because of this being this way, let's say 40 or 50 thousandths, yes, you're going to get free hook because it's a free slope per board. And every single time you have those depressions, depending on how big the depression is, it just piles onto that. And you don't see that anywhere else in the center, except for lane 20, and you have the exact opposite effect.
So the two end lanes.
But lane 20 is way worse than what lane 1 is.
So
Absolutely.
hear that, guys. Lane 20 is actually our lane that's going to take probably the most love from Bowling Voodoo here. But just like every other lane, they're going to go ahead and give the love to all of our lanes, and man, we're going to be really happy. So we get a huge event actually coming up on May 20th and 21st. The Hung is 8K. You guys probably be finished by then.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, so that would be our first major event here on the newly leveled, ready to play lanes. And I got to tell you, that's the highest paying amateur event here in New England. $8,000 to the winner.
Really?
Yeah, Michael Martell, who placed second in the Masters this year, was our winner last year. Yeah, so So check that out. I think there's still squads open for the third squad on that, May 20th and 21st. The Hung is 8K. So
that's the same week I think the women, the PWBA.
Yeah.
They're bowling at Samstown, and we actually worked on those lanes when we were with Lane Analytics like a few years ago.
Yeah.
So the women are actually getting ready to bowl on some lanes that we had previously worked on.
We watch PWBA closely because, as you guys know, I work in the pro shop here with Jimmy Clark. Jimmy's wife, Mallory Clark, Nutsauce, is our PWBA superstar on our sophomore season this year. So, we're super proud of her. So,
But Samstown, I mean, that was. So we've done some lanes in Vegas. We've been all over. We did some out in Europe.
Yeah.
So.
Did the bowling stadium.
Yeah,
Nice.
bowling
Yeah.
stadium.
Did the bowling stadium about 7 or 8 years ago.
And that's where they're holding the Nationals this year.
Yeah.
National Bowling Stadium in Reno.
That's a little different animal all by itself, though. But.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So even that being said, even the what was known to be bowling heaven before Bayside Bowl came around, the National Bowling Stadium in Reno has even hired these guys to make sure their lanes play as fair as possible for all styles of player. That is so cool because here at Bayside, that's what we support. I don't care if you're a 130 bowler that's bowling your first 200 game. That's awesome. That's really kick-ass. It's not just about the good bowlers, it's about all styles of player. Bowling Voodoo is there for your players, proprietors. Take note, get to know them. Do you guys have a website or anything, or somewhere they can go to contact you?
Oh, we just have the Facebook page and it has our contact information.
Perfect. Check them out on Facebook, bowlingvoodoo.com. I'll put up a link in our Frankie and Ding Dong page for you guys. Is it bowlingvoodoo@gmail.com?
Yes.
Yes, so that you guys can email, get a little conversation going with these guys. Again, bowlingvoodoo@gmail.com. Get a hold of these guys. These guys will extend the longevity of your center not only by preserving the lane beds, but preserving your customers, which is most important because that's how you pay your bills. And you want those customers coming back year after year and enjoying your center. The more they enjoy your center and the more they enjoy your bowling in your center, the more they will definitely come back. So thank you guys. It was nice to meet you.
Oh, pleasure.
Silas, great to meet you. Brad, great to meet you. Once again, Bowling Voodoo, check them out. They are here to preserve the game of bowling for us and for the youth that are coming up. So, get a hold of them. They will help you in your center, alleviate some of those issues that you might have, whether it may be even worn out flat gutters, lane topography issues, problems with your house shot, problems with your lane beds getting marred up and you need them resurfaced. These guys will help you out with all of that, and they're going to do a great job. You're probably the only business out there that we know of that actually does this, and definitely the only one that has this much experience in doing that, and you can't buy that experience anywhere. These guys have been doing it for a long time. Please get a hold of them. They will help out your center and help out the game of bowling, which, that's why we're here.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's nice meeting you guys. Once again, I'm King Ding Dong for the Frankie and Ding Dong Show. And remember, get those kids in the center.